Hello everyone, Mr. Wolf Recaps here. Today I'm going to explain a German-American psychological thriller mystery film called Flight Plan. Relax and enjoy.
It's a rough night for Kyle Pratt. Kyle is an American aircraft engineer recently widowed by the death of his husband in Berlin. She has to take her husband's body on a flight to the US with her 4-year-old daughter Julia. To help her with her anxiety, Kyle takes the pills as prescribed by her doctor. The next morning it snows. A taxi is waiting outside to take them to the airport. While at the airport, Kyle loses Julia. She panicked. She sees strangers, couples, strangers, adults, but no one the size of children. She turns again. There's Julia, across the various stands. In an angry tone, he advises her not to wander around without her permission. Kyle and Julia are about to board a plane that Kyle is helping to design. They are the first to enter the cabin. Julia looks out the window. Then she steamed that window with her breath and drew her heart into the steam with her finger. Little clumsy heart. Then Kyle takes a nap. Waking up from a nap, he realizes that Julia has disappeared from her place. Kyle tries to ask the other passengers, but none of the passengers remember seeing her. The flight attendant suggests that Julia may be playing with children her own age. Kyle walks down the aisle trying to find her, but still no sign of Julia. Kyle continues to look around with growing discomfort. She checks their row again where they fell asleep. She looked under that blanket and found a one-armed bear, but not Julia. It is strange. Julia would not go anywhere without her bear. He then contacts flight attendant Stephanie to help her find Julia. Stephanie agrees to help her and announces that the child is missing. A moment later, however, to her surprise, Stephanie tells her that there is no information about her daughter boarding the flight. Kyle is confused. She is very sure that her daughter was with her, so that he tries to prove it by showing his boarding pass. However, Kyle can't find Julia's boarding pass, and also discovers that her daughter's backpack is missing from the trash can, which is impossible since Julia couldn't have gotten here on her own. Not tall enough. Seeing this situation, the Sky Marshal, Jean Carson, begins to monitor her as she searches for her daughter. Kyle demands to see the captain, Marcus Rich, to include him in the search for her daughter. Hearing that there is no record of her daughter boarding the flight, the captain asks if Kyle is currently on any medication. Kyle says she has been taking sleeping pills to help with anxiety over her husband's death. Kyle further reveals that her husband died by falling off their roof 6 days ago, which she refuses to believe was a suicide. The captain and other crew members suspect that Kyle was upset over her husband's death and that he was imagining bringing his daughter on board. Kyle insists on searching Julia from nose to tail. Captain Rich reluctantly agrees and orders the crew members to conduct a thorough search. Cabin lights are on. Please note that all passengers do not leave their seats. Stephanie goes down to the avionics section, looking around, but still no 4-year-old girls. While Pratt is busy searching, she sees an Egyptian. He faces him as he recognizes him from somewhere. She tries to remember, but her brain is too messed up right now. Kyle then asks the captain to look for Julia in the cargo hold. Captain Rich doesn't allow it and angrily states that there are hundreds of passengers on this flight who are currently being ignored because all the flight attendants are busy searching for a child that none of them believe was ever on the plane. Kyle doesn't take it well. She then runs to the Egyptian. She accuses the man of kidnapping her daughter, as she now remembers seeing him last night staring into her daughter's bedroom. The man is annoyed at being accused. He then shows the receipt of the hotel he was staying at, which is nowhere near her apartment. Then chaos ensues. Kyle forces the man to confess. Wrinkles. Carson, fed up with her behavior, states that her husband's death makes more sense now. A couple of hours with her and even he is ready to jump. Not long after, Captain Marcus receives a wire from a hospital in Berlin saying that Julia was with her father when he fell from the roof and also died of internal injuries. Now the team believes they are mistaken. Kyle furiously denies it. She is very sure that Julia is still alive and still on the plane. Carson now feels that Kyle is a threat by making up such a story, so he cuffs her and keeps her in her place. Therapist Lisa approaches her and tries to comfort her, causing Kyle to question his own sanity. Now she begins to accept her daughter's death. However, she then notices that the heart Julia drew earlier on the window next to her seat is real. Kyle becomes increasingly convinced that something strange is going on. She then convinces the therapist to let her use the bathroom. Instead of doing so, She climbs into the upper compartment and sabotages the plane's electronics, deploying the oxygen masks and cutting off the lights. All the passengers and crew begin to panic, but Carson realizes that Kyle is behind this. She uses the chaos to lead the stupid waiter to the lower cargo deck. She finds her husband's coffin. There, she unlocks David's coffin. Suspecting that Julia is inside, she finds only her husband's body and nothing else. Carson finds her, cuffs her, and follows her back, announcing that the flight is making an emergency stop at Goose Bay Airport, where she will be taken into custody. As they follow her to her seat, one of the passengers starts applauding. Applause spreads, filling the deck. Some others stare at her, including an Egyptian. Kyle reaches the back room, where he stops and sits down. Kyle makes one last plea to Carson that he must search the plane upon landing. Carson thinks for a moment and then decides to speak to the captain. However, instead of talking to the captain, he sneaks down to the cargo deck. There he removes 2 explosives and a detonator hidden in David's coffin. He then descends to the avionics section and attaches explosives to the side of the platform, revealing a sleeping Julia. At this point it is revealed that Carson was the mastermind behind all of this. Carson and Stephanie conspire to hijack the plane for a $50 million ransom and frame Kayla. Because of her knowledge of the plane, they kidnap Julia to force Kyle to unlock a suitcase in which he has placed explosives and a detonator. Carson tells the captain that Kyle is the hijacker and threatens to blow up the plane unless the airline transfers $50 million to the bank account. Carson then tells a distraught Stephanie that he intends to blow up the plane, killing the unconscious Julia and leaving Kyle dead, with detonator in hand. Kyle still couldn't believe everything that had happened. She anxiously looks out the window as the plane prepares to land. The other passengers are confused about the forced landing. After landing, passengers exit the plane. As the captain leaves, Kyle confronts the captain, who angrily declares that the ransom has been paid. Kyle was confused by this. He soon realizes that this is all Carson's doing. He uses the situation to twist the truth and make it look like Kyle is a terrorist. Realizing this truth, Kyle decides to use the hijacker's role, ordering Carson to stay on board and the crew to leave. Carson hesitates, but realizes that if he refuses, it will be seen as a charade. As soon as the plane's doors close, Kyle knocks Carson unconscious with a fire extinguisher, handcuffs him to the railing, and takes the detonator from his pocket. Stephanie comes out of hiding. Carson regains consciousness. He chases after Kyle, who shoots until she locks herself in the cockpit. She opens the hatch in the plane's attic and throws out a binder to fool him. Carson hears a thump upstairs and leaves. Kyle walks out and runs into a guilt-ridden Stephanie. She hits her, who panics and immediately runs off the plane. Kyle continues to look for her daughter at avionics, where she finds Julia passed out. She immediately hugs and carries her. Carson soon follows her, and as he searches, he reveals that he killed her husband to smuggle the explosives in his crate, knowing it wouldn't be scanned. At the checkpoint, Kyle immediately takes Julia to the plane's fireproof storage. With detonator in hand, Carson fires at her as she closes the door. With the warehouse's fireproof walls to protect them, she detonates the explosives, exploding the plane, killing them. Carson, passengers and crew watch the explosion in shock. A moment later, Kyle appears with his daughter. As Kyle takes his daughter out onto the runway, all the passengers are shocked to realize that she was telling the truth all along. The next morning at the airport terminal, Captain Rich approaches and apologizes to Kyle for his skepticism. Stephanie leads the FBI in handcuffs, with the agent informing them that the director of the Berlin morgue has also been arrested. Kyle carries Julia through a crowd of travelers who realize the truth. Everyone is stunned and somewhat guilty. It's said she didn't believe her before loading her daughter into the van to drive them away. Julia wakes up and sleepily asks, "Have we arrived yet?" As they prepare to leave. The final scene shows the Egyptian passenger helping to lift his bag as a sign of respect and farewell. That's the end of the movie Flight Plan.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel.